They say the desert takes everything, your name, your past, even your prayers. But when she came limping out of the dust at high noon, barefoot and bleeding, it was clear she hadn't just lost everything. She'd survived something no woman should. No one knew her name. No one claimed her. And she didn't ask for help. She just stood there in the middle of town, staring down the saloon like it had once betrayed her. Her hair was tangled like tumbleweed, her dress torn to the thigh, and her hands clenched into fists. Not from fear, but from rage, like she was daring the earth to swallow her whole and call it mercy. Old Sheriff Lane stepped forward, hat in hand. "Ma'am, you all right?" She didn't blink, didn't flinch, just whispered one word, cracked and dry like old timber. Water. That was the first and last thing she said for 3 days. The preacher gave her shelter. The doctor offered medicine. The women of Dry Hollow gave her bread, blankets, even a comb. But she never smiled, never spoke. She slept in the back pew of the church with one hand clenched around a rusted locket, the only thing she'd carried out of that wasteland. They started calling her the Desert Widow, not because she'd said she lost a husband, but because she looked like she'd buried 10 of them with her bare hands. Kids were warned not to stare. Men lowered their eyes when passing her. She wasn't just a mystery, she was a wound walking on 2 feet. And then he came. Late one evening, just as the sky was bleeding red, a lone rider emerged on the horizon. His horse was black as coal, his coat darker than sin, and the sound of his spurs echoed like thunder rolling down Judgment Day's hallways. Silas Creed, outlaw, gunman, feared even by the men who paid him. He didn't stop at the sheriff's office. Didn't tip his hat to the preacher. Just rode straight through town like a man following a scent. When he reached the chapel, he dismounted slow and steady, then pushed open the doors like he owned salvation itself. She looked up. For the first time in days, her breath caught, not in fear, but something older, deeper, like her soul had recognized a ghost wearing skin. Silas said nothing, just walked up to her, wrapped his duster coat around her shoulders, and without asking, without permission, lifted her into his arms. The townsfolk watched from behind curtains and barrels. No one dared move. "Who is she?" someone whispered. "Don't matter," said Buck Weaver. "She ain't his prisoner, she's his reason." And just like that, she was gone. No name, no goodbye, no promise. Only one truth remained. She came to town with nothing and left with the most dangerous man west of the river. They rode in silence. Her head rested against his chest, listening to the steady thump of a heart that should have stopped long ago. His arms held her like she weighed nothing, like she'd been his to carry all along. The wind whipped past them, but he didn't speak, not once. He didn't ask her name, didn't explain why he'd taken her, and she didn't question him, because deep down, in a place she hadn't touched in years, she knew this wasn't the first time he'd come for her. But this time, she didn't run. As they crossed the dry riverbed, the moon rose full and cold. Coyotes howled in the distance, and somewhere behind them, the town of Dry Hollow exhaled like it had witnessed something biblical. His horse crested a ridge and stopped. Below lay a cabin, weather-beaten, leaning slightly, tucked between jagged rocks and twisted trees. No smoke in the chimney, no lights in the window. Just silence, deep and heavy. He slid down first, then reached up and pulled her gently from the saddle. His hands were calloused, scarred, hands that had pulled triggers, stitched wounds, buried secrets. But when they touched her, they felt like mercy. She hesitated at the door. He paused, then turned the knob and opened it wide, not like a host, but like a man returning to the one place he still remembered how to breathe. The inside was simple. One bed, one table, a fireplace cold, with ash, no pictures, no past, just a place to disappear. He set her down on the bed, knelt and untied her boots. boots too big, borrowed from someone else. He didn't look her in the eye, didn't smile, just worked slow, like touching her too fast might break something. Sacred. Then he stood. "I'll make fire," he said, voice low as gravel. She blinked. It was the first time she'd heard him speak. His voice sounded like old whiskey, burnt, rough but honest. As he struck the flint, she looked around. There was no mirror, no clock, no maps. Just a knife driven deep into the wooden table and a coil of rope hanging on the wall, and something else, a single tattered letter sealed with wax, with her handwriting on the envelope. Her breath hitched. She rose, walked to it like in a trance, fingers trembling as she touched the edge. She opened it, but there was no paper inside. Just one thing, a gold wedding band. She turned to him, eyes wide, heart racing. "What is this?" she whispered. He didn't look up. "Yours. But I don't remember. I do." The wind howled through the broken window, and outside, in the darkness, footsteps. Silas froze. He grabbed his gun without a sound and moved to the door like a shadow in motion. She clutched the letter. Something was coming. And whatever it was coming for her. The door creaked open just a breath, and Silas was already there, pistol cocked, eyes sharp as a rattlesnake mid-strike. She stayed back, frozen, but her heart, it pounded like hooves on a coffin lid. Nothing moved. Not yet. Then came the sound. Slow, measured steps across gravel, boots, grinding the earth like it owed them something. 3 shadows appeared through the cracked window, all tall, all armed, all marked with the kind of silence that only comes after bloodshed. Silas didn't blink. "Step inside," he said coolly, "and I swear on hell's own teeth, you'll leave lighter than you came." A low chuckle answered, then a voice. Familiar. Cruel. "She's ours, Creed. You always did like taking things that weren't offered." Her knees buckled. That voice. She knew it, not from dreams, but nightmares. A man stepped into the doorway, wide brim hat, gray beard, snake tattoo curling down his neck. "Hello, darlin'," he said, eyes glinting. "Didn't think you could run far enough, did ya?" She stepped back, breath caught in her throat. The memories came rushing. A burning barn, chains around her ankles, the sound of men laughing as they played cards over screams. Her mouth moved, but no words came. Silas turned his head halfway, just enough to speak to her without looking away from death. "You know him?" She nodded once. Silas didn't ask another question. He moved like a ghost. One shot to the chest of the man behind the leader. Another to the right. Quick. Clean. Final. The third tried to run, didn't get far, then only the snake-necked man was left. His hands went up, smile gone. "You can't kill me, Creed. She belongs to me." The silence that followed was ancient, heavy, like the desert itself was listening. Silas walked forward, slow, measured, gun still raised. "You're wrong about 2 things, he said. "She never belonged to you." Click. "And I never asked twice." Bang. The man dropped, lifeless. Ashes in the dust. Inside the cabin, she collapsed to her knees, not from fear, but release. For the first time in what felt like lifetimes, she wasn't running anymore. Silas stood over the bodies for a long while. Then he turned, walked back in, and shut the door behind him like closing a book that didn't deserve another chapter. She looked up at him, eyes glassy. Why did you come for me?" He set his gun down gently, knelt beside her, and said, "Because once, a long time ago, you came for me." The fire crackled low in the hearth, casting flickering shadows on the wooden walls. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring into the flames like they could burn away her past. Silas moved like a man who'd walked through fire before. Quiet, precise, haunted. He poured water into a tin cup, handed it to her without a word. She sipped slowly, then looked up. "You said I saved you once." He didn't speak for a moment. Then he pulled back his shirt sleeve. A scar, ugly, deep, twisting like barbed wire across his ribs. 3 years ago, near the border, I was left to die in a ditch outside a mining town, bullet in my gut, fever, buzzards already circling. His eyes met hers, steady. "You were just passing through, no name, no horse, but you dragged me under a bridge, stitched me up with thread and whiskey, and disappeared before I woke." She blinked, stunned. "I don't remember that." "I do? Every day." His voice cracked just enough to prove he wasn't lying. She looked down, fingers trembling around the cup. "I've been running so long, I don't even know who I am anymore." Silas sat across from her. "You don't need a name. You just need truth." She looked at him, bare and vulnerable for the first time. "What if the truth is I'm not worth saving?" He leaned in, voice low. "Then I'm the biggest fool this side of the Rockies, because I've already killed for you." Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't cry. She hadn't cried in years. Her pain had dried up like the creeks out back, cracked and dusty. He rose, walked to the cabinet, pulled out a bundle wrapped in oilcloth, laid it on the table. Inside, a small revolver, a faded photograph, and a folded telegram. She picked up the photo. It was her, not as she was now, but clean, smiling, holding a child. A boy. Her hands shook, her voice barely a whisper. Where did you get this?" "I've been trying to find you for 2 years," he said. "And you weren't just running from the man I shot today?" He tapped the telegram. "You were running from something worse." She unfolded it. Her face paled. The words were few, but enough. Federal notice. Subject escaped custody from Graymore Asylum. Name unknown, dangerous. Former identity tied to classified file. Status, wife to known outlaw Elias Hart. Her lips trembled. "Elias." Silas stared at her, jaw tight. "You were his wife." She clutched the photo to her chest. Her knees gave out again, not from weakness, but from the weight of a truth buried too long. "He's not dead," she whispered. "No," Silas said, voice like thunder in the dark. "But he's coming." Outside, the wind had changed. It whistled low through the canyon, carrying the scent of smoke and iron, like gunpowder kissed with blood. Inside the cabin, she stood trembling, the photograph clutched to her chest like a shield that could no longer protect her. Her voice cracked. "I thought Elias was dead." Silas didn't move, didn't speak. He just watched her with the kind of stillness that only came before a storm. "You said I saved you once," she whispered. "But I didn't even remember your face. I don't even remember my own son's name." Silas stepped closer, slow and careful, like approaching a wild animal too hurt to run. "That wasn't your fault. They took everything from you. Elias." He made sure of it. Her eyes flicked up, sharp. "Why are you helping me?" He looked down at the floorboards, then back at her. "Because I've done things too. Things that can't be forgiven. But saving you, it's the one thing I don't regret." She swallowed hard. "So what now?" Silas's voice dropped. "Now, we get ready." He unrolled a hand-drawn map on the table, the canyon, the river fork, the ghost town at Gravedigger's Ridge. Markings in red, dates scribbled in the margins. It wasn't just a map. It was a hunt. "You've been tracking him," she realized. "For a year," Silas said. "He disappeared after the Elkhorn massacre, left no bodies, just ashes. Folks say he became something else. Not quite a man anymore." Her breath hitched. "He'll come here?" "He won't just come. He'll tear through heaven to find you." She turned toward the window. The night was darker now, almost too still, as if the world was holding its breath. She whispered, "Then let him come." Silas raised an eyebrow. "You sure?" "I'm tired of hiding. If I ever meant anything to the woman in that photograph, then I'll fight." He nodded once, but before he could speak, the horse outside whinnied loud. Spooked. Then silence. Then a soft knock at the door. Once, twice, 3 times. She froze. "No one knocks in these parts," Silas muttered. He grabbed his rifle, signaled her to move behind the bed. She crawled low, heart hammering, hands shaking. He opened the door slow. Nothing. Just a sack on the ground. Inside, a single toy. A carved wooden horse, the same her son used to carry everywhere, and burned into its belly, carved deep with a blade. "I want her back." Silas closed the door, face pale but jaw locked. "It's him," she said. He nodded and whispered, "The devil just sent a message, and we're already in his house." The wooden horse sat on the table like it was ticking. Not a toy, but a warning. Her hands hovered over it, fingers trembling as if the past could bite. Silas hadn't spoken since he read the carving. His face was tight, thoughtful, like he was solving a riddle written in blood. Finally, he said, "He's not coming for revenge. He's coming to finish what he started." She looked up. "What does that mean?" Silas sat down slow, leaned forward with elbows on his knees. "You were with Elias when he ruled the outlaw circuit from Kansas to Tombstone. He wasn't just feared. He was followed. Like a prophet. Like something bigger than man." She shook her head. "That's not who he was to me. He was gentle. At first. Sweet." Silas nodded. "That's how poison works. Sweet till you swallow it." Her breath caught. "I stayed," she whispered, "even when he grew darker. Even when the fire started. I stayed because I was afraid of who I'd be without him." Silas's eyes softened, just a little. "Then the fires weren't the worst thing he burned." She wiped at her eyes, angry at the tears. "He took our son." Silas's voice was low. "That's why he sent the toy. He's telling you. The boy's alive." Her head jerked up. "Alive? I can't prove it, but I've heard things. There's a child, traveling with a man who doesn't sleep indoors. People say the boy never speaks, just watches with those hollow eyes, like something was stolen from him before he ever learned words." She clenched her fists. "If Elias is using him—" "He is," Silas interrupted. "Because that's what he does. He breaks things, twists them, and the moment you step outside that door, he'll be waiting." She stood, eyes blazing. "Then, let's go to him." Silas grabbed her wrist, firm, not rough. "No, you don't walk into fire unless you know where the water is." He unrolled another paper. This one. A letter, signed by Elias, written in red. "I made you, I marked you, and when you ran, you broke the covenant. But the boy is safe. For now. If you want him, come home." "Home?" she said bitterly. "You think he means the ranch?" Silas shook his head. "He means the place where it all started, the church in Dust Vale, where you married him, where the blood first spilled." Her lips parted. "But it burned down." Silas looked her dead in the eye. "No. He rebuilt it. They left before dawn, no goodbyes, no trace. Just dust kicking up behind Silas's mare and the ache of something old stirring inside her chest. The road to Dust Vale was half forgotten, barely more than scars in the dirt. But she remembered it. Every bend, every tree bent by the wind. Because that path had once been her future, and then her hell. Silas rode ahead, silent but alert. Rifle slung across his back, eyes always moving. He wasn't just her protector now. He was her mirror. Cracked, but reflecting every part of her she'd buried. They stopped by an abandoned way station mid-afternoon. Dry well, rotting wood. A single wooden sign barely hanging on its last nail. Sanctuary Hollow, 8 miles. She dismounted, her knees weak. I used to walk this road barefoot. Silas glanced at her. When? She looked past him. When I ran from him the first time. Silas stepped closer. Why'd you go back? She turned her face toward the sun, as if the truth needed light to come out. I was pregnant. His breath caught, but he said nothing. I thought, maybe a child would change him, make him softer, make him human again. She laughed bitterly, but all it did was give him another chain to use on me. Silas stared into the distance. You're not that woman anymore. She looked at him. No, but I don't know what I am now. You're the storm, he said. And storms don't beg, they arrive. Before she could answer, thunder cracked by, but the sky was clear. She froze. That's not weather, she said. No, Silas muttered. That's cannon fire. They raced ahead, fast, urgent, dust in their teeth, until they reached the ridge above Dust Vale. What they saw made her heart lurch. The town was still there, but different. Hollow. Deserted except for a single building standing tall in the middle of the ruins. A church. Rebuilt in white stone and black timber. Unnatural. Wrong. Its spire pointed like a dagger at the sky. Smoke rose from its chimney. Silas pulled out his spyglass. His hands stilled. What? She asked. He passed it to her. She looked. A child stood, outside the church doors, pale, silent, holding a wooden horse. Her voice broke. It's him, my son. Silas's jaw clenched. Then it's already begun. She wanted to run to him. The moment she saw her son standing outside that church, silent, still, holding the same wooden horse, every instinct screamed, Go! Now! But something was wrong. He didn't move, didn't blink, didn't even sway. With the wind, like a statue carved from memory. Silas placed a firm hand on her shoulder. Wait, she whispered. That's my boy. I know, he said, but look closer. She raised the spyglass again, and then she saw it, his eyes, wide open, dark, but empty. Not in fear, not in shock. Like the soul had been pulled out and only a shell remained. She pulled the glass away, heart hammering. He's not normal. Silas looked grim. He's bait. Her voice cracked. What did Elias do to him? Silas didn't answer. He was already scanning the ridgeline, hand drifting to his revolver. He's watching us. Somewhere out. There! A crow screamed above them, sudden and sharp. That's when she noticed something else. The air smelled like sandalwood, Elias's cologne. A scent she hadn't smelled in years, now riding the wind like it had never left. Her knees buckled slightly. Silas caught her. Stay with me. She nodded, forcing her breath to slow. Silas handed her a small silver locket. Found this in the saddlebag before we left. She opened it. Inside was a picture. Her, holding the boy, laughing. Not a memory she remembered, and, opposite the photo, etched in silver, bring her to the altar. She stared at it. He thinks I'll kneel for him again. Silas's jaw tightened. He doesn't want you to kneel. He wants you to belong, like before. And he's using your son as the chain. She stood tall, anger lighting her face. Then I'm breaking that chain. Silas looked at the church one more time. We go at sundown. Why wait? She asked. He looked her dead in the eyes. Because when the sun dies, monsters come out to prey. The sun dipped low, setting the sky on fire behind the twisted cross atop the rebuilt church. They approached slow, every footstep a whisper on scorched earth. The town was silent. Too silent. She gripped Silas's arm, whispering, It feels like the dead are listening. He didn't speak, just kept his hand near his gun. Then, a creak. The front doors of the church opened, on their own, and her son walked inside. "No!" she gasped, rushing forward, but Silas yanked her back hard. From the shadows of the doorway, a figure emerged, not limping, not staggering, but floating. Like the ground bent beneath him, Elias, but not as she remembered him. His beard was longer, gray woven with black, his eyes sunken, gleaming like coals. A long black coat draped over his frame, one side torn, revealing deep burn scars along his ribs, but it was the smile that stopped her heart. "Welcome home, my bride," he said. She stepped forward, defiant. "I'm not yours." "Oh, but you were. Body, name, and soul. And you left me." He tilted his head. "Took the fire to escape me. And now you return to the ashes." Silas stepped in front of her. "Let the boy go." Elias barely looked at him. "You've always been in the way, Silas. You were the ghost she clung to when my hands got too tight." Her eyes narrowed. "He's more man than you ever were." Elias grinned. "Man? He left you. I raised your son. Taught him silence, taught him obedience." Her fists shook. "You stole him." He stepped down the church stairs, boots not even echoing. "I gave him a purpose." Silas drew his gun. Elias didn't flinch. "I wouldn't," Elias said calmly. "This town is hollow but not empty." He raised one hand. Doors creaked open across the street. From every building, men stepped out, eyes glazed, silent, empty, like puppets on invisible strings. She gasped. "You built an army." "No," Elias said softly. "I built a congregation." Silas lowered his gun, eyes darting. "He's drugged them, or worse." Elias extended his hand. "One step inside, and your boy walks free." She stared at that outstretched hand, the same hand that once stroked her hair after bruising her arms, and from the church, her son stared back, still not blinking. She whispered to Silas, "He doesn't need saving. He needs waking up." Silas looked at her. "Then let's burn this place all over again." The congregation didn't move. They just stared, blank, hollow-eyed, as if some dark hymn held their souls in its grip. She stepped forward. Silas grabbed her arm. "You sure?" "No," she whispered. "But he's inside. And he's still, my son." She walked past the line of puppets, boots crunching on broken gravel, her breath steady but shallow. Elias smiled as she reached the steps. "There she is, the prodigal heart." She didn't answer, just climbed. Every step felt like walking backward into a life she swore she'd buried, but when she crossed the threshold, the church breathed. Candles lit by themselves. The air warmed, and a long, low hum began to rise from the floorboards, like voices buried beneath the foundation had begun to sing. She froze. The church looked the same arch where she was once married, the same wooden pews she'd bled on when Elias claimed her. But the walls, they were carved now. With her name, over and over, in every language. She turned to Elias. "What is this?" He walked slowly, almost reverently. "I rebuilt this place stone by stone, memory by memory. I carved your name so the church would remember you, so it would know its queen." "You're insane." "I'm devoted." She looked toward the altar. Her son stood there, still holding the wooden horse. She called softly, "Sweetheart, it's Mama." For a split second, something flickered in his eyes. Elias hissed. "Don't speak to him." She turned on him. "He's my blood." Elias raised his arms. "He is your offering." The hum beneath the church turned into a chant, a dozen voices whispering her name, rising like smoke from the floor. Elias walked toward the boy. Silas burst through the doors, gun drawn. "Step away!" The church groaned, and the doors slammed shut behind him. They were sealed in, trapped. Elias laughed, unbothered. Guns don't work here, Silas. Only memory does. She stepped between them. Then remember this. I am not yours, and I never was. Elias's smile cracked. The boy looked at her again, blinked. Once, she whispered. Do you remember what Mama used to say before bed? His lips trembled. Close. Your eyes. The monsters are tired. Tears welled in her eyes. That's right. The candles flickered violently. Elias screamed, Stop! He's mine! But the boy stepped down from the altar, wooden horse falling from his hand. He ran into her arms, and the church shuddered. She held him close. His little arms trembled around her neck, as if touch alone could shake the fog from his soul. Behind them, Elias stood frozen, eyes wide, breath shallow, like a man watching his empire crack. Silas moved to cover them, but the church, it shifted. The floor began to bleed. From the cracks in the wood, thick, dark liquid oozed upward, slow and deliberate, like the very memory of this place had turned to rot. She looked down, stunned. What is this? Elias whispered. It's you. The church is mourning its bride. She turned to him, disgust sharp in her voice. This was never a church, just a tomb you dressed in scripture. Elias took a step forward, and the boy flinched. She felt it, the deep-rooted fear that lived in his small frame. Years of silence, of commands barked instead of love given, and then she saw it in his eyes. Resolve. He pulled back from her arms and walked to Elias. Wait! She cried, panic rising. Silas reached for his gun again, but the shadows of the pews moved. Elias's congregation stood in unison, blocking every exit. The boy stood before his father. Head bowed, Elias smiled. Yes, come home, my son. But the boy didn't lift his head. Instead, he reached into his coat pocket and pulled something out, a matchstick. The entire church fell silent. Elias's smile faded. What are you doing? The boy whispered. Mama said the monsters are tired. Then he struck the match. The chow. Flame danced in his fingers. He dropped it onto the bleeding floor. Fire erupted instantly. The dark blood caught flame like oil, racing through the wooden planks, climbing the walls where her name had been carved 1,000 times. Elias roared. No, this place is sacred! She grabbed her son's hand and ran. Silas kicked open a side window and they leapt through it just as the stained glass exploded behind them. Outside, night had fallen, and the entire church glowed like hell. From the inside, people from the town began to pour into the street, freed from the trance, blinking like waking from a nightmare. The boy coughed into her chest, breathing hard. She kissed his head. You remembered me. He nodded, voice trembling. I'm not afraid anymore. Silas looked at the burning church, then at her. You ended it. But she knew better. No, she said. He did. And somewhere inside that fire, Elias screamed. The fire swallowed the church whole. Embers rose into the night like lost prayers, vanishing into the stars. She sat on the porch of the old sheriff's house, holding her son wrapped in a wool blanket. His breathing had evened out, but his eyes, they were older now, as if some shadow had finally walked out of him. Silas leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, staring at the burning wreck. Never thought I'd see that place burn twice, he muttered. She looked at him. You were there the first time? He nodded slowly. I was the deputy when Elias first showed up. Said he was sent by God to clean the town. We let him build that church. Thought he was a savior. She held her son tighter. He wasn't a preacher. He was a monster who liked velvet words. Silas looked down. He had people convinced, until girls started disappearing. Your wedding? That was the last day I wore a badge. She looked up, startled. You were there that day? I tried. To stop it, he said, voice low. But he had the town in his palm. When you ran, I followed, but you vanished like dust. I figured you died. I almost did. Silas met her eyes, and for a long moment they just sat in that truth. Then, a scream pierced the silence. Her son jolted awake. Silas stood tall. That came from the canyon. She shook her head. No one goes there. That's why I'm going, he said, already holstering his gun. She stood too. You're not going alone. But before they could move, someone stumbled into the road. A man, burned. His skin charred, coat smoking. It was Elias. He collapsed in the dirt, laughing, a wet, broken sound. You think it ends like this? He croaked. You burned the house, but the root, it's under the ground. Silas drew his weapon, but Elias didn't reach for anything. He just bled. She knelt beside him, her voice cold. How are you still breathing? He coughed. Because fire can't kill what was never alive. I gave up my soul long ago, girl. Silas leaned in. What root? Elias laughed again. You think I was the only one preaching? I was just the voice. But the body, it's coming. You'll see. And then his eyes rolled back, his body convulsed, and he died, grinning. The boy whispered, Mama, was he telling the truth? She stared at Elias's corpse, heart pounding. I don't know, she said softly. But if there's more, we'll face it. Silas looked up at the sky. The flames were gone now, but far in the distance, a second plume of smoke had begun to rise. The town buried Elias before sunrise, not out of respect, but to trap his memory beneath cold soil where it belonged. No ceremony, no prayers, just dirt over a devil. She watched from a distance, her son clinging to her coat, Silas standing, quietly beside them. I don't like him in the ground, the boy whispered. Feels like he'll grow. She knelt beside him. That's why we'll plant something stronger on top. But Silas wasn't looking at the grave. He was holding something in his hand, a burnt scrap of paper they'd pulled from Elias's boot. Letter. He passed it to her. The writing was smudged from sweat and fire, but still legible. If I fall, send word to Bitter Creek. The seed will awaken. She felt the chill race up her spine. Bitter Creek's a ghost town. Silas shook his head. Not anymore. Her breath caught. You think someone's there? I think something is, he said grimly, and it's waiting. She folded the letter slowly. Then we ride at dawn. Silas hesitated. Take the boy and go south. You've done enough. But she turned to him, eyes fierce. I didn't survive hell just to run from its ashes. Their eyes locked, and something unspoken passed. Between them. He nodded once. Then we ride together. That night, they slept with one eye open. And when dawn bled over the hills, the three of them stood at the edge of town, horses saddled, the wind carrying the scent of scorched wood, and something older, something crawling out of time. The townsfolk watched them ride out, some with fear, some with silent prayers. She didn't look back. She had no name, no husband, no past to cling to. But now, she had a mission, and two hearts that beat with hers. Ahead, the desert opened its arms like an old enemy, and Bitter Creek waited like a closed door creaking on its hinge. They reached Bitter Creek by sundown, but the town didn't look dead. Windows were lit. Smoke curled from chimneys. And yet, not a single soul moved on the streets. She pulled the reins, slowing her, hoarse. The boy clutched her waist tighter. Silas scanned the buildings. Something's off. A town this quiet isn't asleep, it's listening. They dismounted slowly, boots crunching against red dust. The saloon doors swayed slightly, even though there was no wind. Her hand slid to her revolver. The boy whispered, I don't like it here. She knelt to meet his eyes. Neither do, but whatever this place is, we face it together. They moved to the center of the street. Then, a sound. A soft creak. The church bell above the hill rang once. Silas flinched. No one's there to pull it. She stepped forward, eyes locked on the church. Its steeple twisted, almost bent, like time had tried to erase it but stopped halfway. Suddenly, a voice echoed behind them. "You finally came back." They spun around. An old man stood in the doorway of the general store, half his face covered by a thick beard, his eyes pale and distant. "Back?" she asked cautiously. He nodded. "You don't remember me. That's all right. They wiped everything before they threw you into Elias's arms." She stepped closer. "Who are you?" "I was your uncle once," he said. "Before they took you from Bitter Creek. Before Elias turned you into his bride." Her heart nearly stopped. Silas moved closer, hand on his gun. "What do you mean, they?" The old man stepped forward, eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. "They planted you here. A vessel. The church was never the seed which you were." She staggered back. "That's not true." "It is," he whispered. "You were born in Bitter Creek, baptized in the blood sermon. You carry the last voice." Her knees buckled. The boy grabbed her arm. Silas cursed under his breath, but the old man raised his hand. "You can still stop. You didn't burn the church, bury the name, or let it rise." Behind them, the church bell rang again, without a hand touching it, and all around them, the townsfolk began to step into the streets. Silently, men, women, children, all wearing white, all staring at her. They surrounded her. Dozens of faces, lifeless, white-robed, silent. But their eyes, they all shimmered with something ancient, something buried. Silas stepped in front of her, weapon drawn. "Back away!" The old man raised a hand. "They won't hurt her. They came to awaken her." "I don't want to be awakened," she said, her voice cracking, but deep inside something pulsed, not fear, memory, flashes, a church with red candles, a voice chanting in tongues, her crying as hands held her over a basin not filled with water, but blood. She staggered. "You're lying." "No," the old man whispered. "You were the last child of the blood sermon. Your father was their voice. Elias was only meant to keep you safe. Until the time." Silas shouted, "You think we'll let you take her?" But she raised a hand. "No," she whispered. "I'll choose what I become." The old man shook his head. "You cannot fight your nature." She looked down at her son. His eyes were full of tears, not from fear, but because he'd seen her, the real her, and he still held her hand. "I already did," she whispered. Then, she turned, pulled a match from Silas's satchel, and faced the old church. One strike. Flame danced on the tip. The townspeople gasped in unison, and she threw it. The church burst into flames. It caught fast, wood dry as bones, soaked with time and secrets. Screams echoed, not from mouths, but from the walls, the windows, the very earth beneath Bitter Creek. The townspeople dropped to their knees, wailing, but she didn't flinch. "I was never yours," she said, voice steel. "I have no name because I'll write my own. I had no husband because I was never meant to be owned. And I had no place to go, until I made one." She turned to Silas. "I want to go home." He smiled, eyes full of something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. They rode out at dawn. Behind them, Bitter Creek burned to ash, and ahead was nothing but wide, open land, waiting to be claimed by a woman who'd once been forgotten. But now she had a name, mother, a place. Free. And beside her, a man who feared nothing, not even her fire, because he'd loved her before she knew who she was, and he'd ride with her into whatever came next. If you like this type of videos, then subscribe our channel and appreciate us.